then I do this again. And how does that look for everyone? Goodness, stop it, Mac. Sometimes. All right, there we go. That should be good, huh? Can everybody see? Looks good. Excellent. Thank you, Jonathan. All right, so thank you everybody for joining my talk today for Data TGIF. I used to love Fridays until one of my bosses told me, oh my God, it's Friday, another day closer to Monday. And then I was like, dude, that was terrible. So, but thank God it's Friday. Today I'm going to be talking about containers and data platform development. And this is the way that I actually use containers to build DBA tools. Right. So my name is Chrissy LeMaire. I am a dual Microsoft MVP and GitHub store. And oh my God, coming soon. Super excited. One of our co-authors is actually in this meeting as well, Jess Pomfret. Finally, I signed a contract back in December of 2018. No, yeah, 2018. And we started writing in January of 2019. The book Learn DBA Tools in a Month of Lunches is going to be in bookstores on June 7th of 2022. We're super excited. It looks beautiful. It looks like a real book, which was weird because it went from like markdown to a real book. So if you are interested and have not purchased the book, you can get it for 50% off using this code that I've been using for years. It works. It continues to work. If it doesn't work for you, let me know. But the last time I tried, it totally worked. So it's BL DBA Tools 50. So I am on Twitter. I'm at CL. If you have any questions about PowerShell, SQL, tornadoes, you could just hit me up. I'm there and I tweet about those things. Not about tornadoes. Well, I tweet about tornadoes, but I'm not an authority. So today I'm going to be talking about Docker. And I know whenever I first heard about containers, it really sounded like this abstract weird thing that was hard, and it felt like so command liney, and I couldn't quite put my brain around it until I installed Docker Desktop. This is what it looks like to me. This is manageable, right? Like I could just use my mouse and then I could delete stuff. I could start stuff. I do have to still use the command line, but a lot of times if I'm just not feeling it and kind of feeling lazy, I will totally just keep Docker on desktop on one screen and then my coding on another, and I'll just like keep pressing delete and restart. So this is what it looks like. It's pretty cool interface. Docker Desktop is free for personal use, and if you're interested in a similar application, there's another one called Podman with a desktop that actually looks very similar to this too. That one's free and open source. Docker is not. And what I love about SQL Server like the SQL Server containers, otherwise known as SQL Server on Linux, is that it's so familiar. When I log into SQL Server Management Studio, like it's all the same thing, which I was really impressed about. As you can see, there's Ola Hallengren's all of the default jobs that his solution creates, and then on the left it looks like the same thing. So if you're used to working with SQL Server, this should be familiar to you. What up, Brett? Another thing that's cool is I actually created a couple containers for the community, and even logging into it is familiar. I set it for the port to be 1433, so you log in just as you would if you installed SQL Server for Windows. So it's just there with the server name with localhost, and then the login. I changed it to SQL admin to try to dissuade people from using SA. And so, yeah, this is what it looks like. Now, if you install more than one container, named instances won't work. So you just have to put a comma there and then specify the port of that second container, but still pretty familiar overall. So what can you do with these containers? You can practice instance migration. So, you have to have 2 instances for that. And if you don't want to do it in your own environment, then you could just practice with these little containers. And then once you're done, throw them away, start over. It'll start from exact scratch. You could practice setting up availability groups, because for me that was so hard. I would like add it, and then whenever I was creating the commands for DBA tools, I would create it, I would do it wrong. And so containers, they actually do work with availability groups. That's something you could do with it. You can try restoring to a point in time or to a specific transaction. So pretty much anything that you can do on SQL Server on Windows, you can do for the most part on SQL Server on Linux. You could develop new commands. That's what I do. I recently created a set of commands for TDE, or transparent data encryption, and all of it was done in like using containers. And then I did in the end, whenever I was done, I wanted to make sure it worked on Windows, so I tried it against that as well. You can also test your software application suite. So you can do things like GitHub Actions. You can use containers to test all of your commands. That's what we do. We actually have something called AppVeyor that we use. That's a bunch of SQL Server on Windows instances. But sometimes, because of the resource contention, they don't work. So for the commands that don't work on Windows, we'll just use them against SQL Server on Linux using containers and Docker and GitHub Actions. You can also persist data if you want. So for me, that's not the way that I use it. I usually throw everything away because I want it to start from scratch. You know, during the old days, I remember whenever I would develop a new database or I was creating new commands, I would have all of this data that would just stay there, and then I'd have to write all of this code to make it go away and to clean up, especially with that that command start DBA migration. I would actually use VMware snapshots for that, but that was a pain and it's no longer painful. But if you do want to persist your data, you totally can. So what can't you do? You actually can't use SQL Configuration Manager, and that is because anything that uses SQL WMI, which is SQL Windows Management Instrumentation, it doesn't work against Linux containers. So all of this stuff that you see here, you won't be able to do. But what you can do instead is you can reach into your container and you could set up, I really liked this, the mssql.conf. A lot of people do it from the command line and they'll just issue a bunch of commands, but I like working more with config files. So it is possible, like a lot of the things are possible. You just have to do it a slightly different way when using containers. Also, check this out. This is VS Code, like showing you the entire operating system of the containers, which is really nice. There are some limitations. If you go to sqlps.io/unsupported, this is a short link that'll let you know. I was really impressed, honestly, by this table that lists the limitations of SQL Server on Linux. A lot of times whenever somebody or an organization develops something on Windows and then they like kind of port it to Linux, there's so many things that aren't supported, but the limitations for SQL Server on Linux are pretty limited. I mean, in my experience, this is pretty impressive for me. So this demo time, are there any questions so far? I don't think we have time for questions right now, actually. Sorry, we could do it after. Thank you. So now what I'm going to do is take you to dbatools.io/docker. This is it used to be a blog post and then I moved it to GitHub discussions, but this is a tutorial for beginners that are using Docker, and I will go through it. So like I'd mentioned earlier, I created two SQL Server on Linux containers for the community. Now, Microsoft has their own containers, but it's just super empty, right? And you set your own SA password. There's no databases there. But I wanted to show people how powerful it was to perform migrations and do other super fun things. And so I created a customized container, actually two of them, and I put them out on Docker Hub. And the way that you download it is you just like read what you want to, and we're going to be doing a ton of copy and pasting. So here we'll get the base images. We'll go down here to PowerShell. Ooh, look, I started clean. Thank you, Chrissy. You're welcome. All right, so what this does is it'll just like pull the images from Docker Hub. For me, I already have the latest image. Probably, yeah, it looks pretty clean. This usually takes, I don't know, maybe about like a couple minutes, maybe 1 to 2 minutes, and it'll go ahead, it'll pull down that image. And from that base image, that's sort of like a database snapshot or a VMware snapshot. You have this base image that you could just revert to over and over again. So we go through. So the first image has a bunch of stuff. It has Ola Hallengren's SQL agent jobs. It has some databases. It has a whole bunch of logins. And then the second one has pretty much nothing, and that enables you to see just how effective it is when you're performing that migration. So yeah, we got some certificates, some endpoints, etc. The password for the containers that I created is dbatools.I. So we will copy this code and paste it in. And I use this all the time as I'm developing DBA tools commands. I come to this web page over and over again. So I already created my local net. And what this does is this creates 2 containers from 2 different images. And I'll just go through real quick. The first thing that I do is I create a shared network so that they can talk to each other. Otherwise, they'll be totally isolated, and then you wouldn't be able to perform your migrations. And I think that this is especially important when you are developing tools. Because usually when we develop tools, we have like, a whole lab full of SQL servers that can talk to each other. So the network is really important. The next thing here is where I expose port 1433 and then 143333 for the second one. I create a volume that's shared between them. So you can kind of think of this as like a network storage, like a network location. And then I name them. I don't like things that are like generically named, so name them here. I set that network to local net, and then the D is for daemon, so it runs without bringing you to a prompt. And then here's the SQL instance 1 that's stacked, and then the empty SQL instance 2. Next up, it's nice. Time to play. We keeping it simple. It does say that things won't work like SQL Configuration Manager, or if you need to do remoting like WinRM, you won't be able to get the disk space because that is based on WinRM, and containers do not support it. So we're going to follow this. The first thing we're going to do is create a credential. Detached. You know what? It might be detached. I probably got that wrong. Thank you. Detached sounds right. I thought of it in my head as daemon because they just kind of run in the background. So now I'm going to type in dbatools.io. All right. Now we're just going to copy this and create a new availability group. And basically what I'm doing right now for you is to see first how cool it is that you can do all of this with containers. But the other thing that I want to do is kind of dirty up my second and it would be the second instance and the first instance. I'm dirtying up both of these instances and making it harder to use pubs, right? So what I did was I created an availability group. I used pubs. So now if I wanted to migrate pubs and test that, I won't be able to. Let's go ahead and look at SQL. Let's see, SQL, mssql1. Nope, localhost. That's what it is. Cool. So we're going to connect there. And then we will connect, 14333. dbatools.io. All right, so let's go ahead and look at it. We have pubs. So now imagine if I want to do something with pubs, it's kind of stuck. It's doing its own thing. It's synchronizing. It's part of this other stuff. Now that I've successfully done this, it would be a good idea perhaps to just stop and kill the containers, remove them, and then restart them over if I did want to, for instance, migrate pubs. So then we go through. I really do like this tutorial because I personally use it all the time. You could practice things like backups and even like export DBA instance, which is fantastic for disaster recovery. We created that credential, right? And then we're just setting it to localhost. So then it's exporting everything from there. So I just wanted to throw this one in as a lagniappe because lagniappe means extra in Cajun French. I wanted to throw it in for lagniappe because DR is super important. We should all be doing it. And I use export DBA instance all of the time. You're totally right, it's attached. All right, so now we're gonna do a migration, but we kind of can't, right? Because pubs is already migrated. We could set it to exclude pubs, but what we should do is, look, oh, this is super nice. Hey, and it even has the availability groups. So what we're gonna do now is go here, back to Docker, and delete it, right? Then that one's gone. This one is gone. We scroll back up. This isn't the effective part. This is just showing how I used to do it. Actually, I created a function just for this presentation that I'm going to use all the time now because I am very manual. So I'm just going to paste that again. Now it's starting over. All right. And then when we go here, we say refresh, check it out. Now it has started from scratch. There's no availability groups anymore. If we go and where are those? There we go. I mean, how cool is that AGs are available on Linux? And look, there's nothing there. So now I can actually go back. Oops. I could go back and practice that other command. Going past there. We already have our credentials set. Now we're going to perform a migration from one to the other. Now, what is this going to do? It's going to dirty up the second container. It's going to be awesome. It's going to like migrate everything and we could just sit back, relax. We could drink a beer. We could go grocery shopping. We could do all of that. But as this is happening, that second container is getting a whole bunch of objects that if I want to do stuff on there, I wouldn't, I'd have to really accommodate for the non-cleanliness of that second instance. Actually, Gary, a long time ago, are you talking to Brett? Brett can answer too. That was one of the first things that I ever played on was VMS. I think that we had it at college, which whenever I went to college in '96, I think even by then VMS was not a recent technology. Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, I really liked it. Was cool. I went to school at Cal State San Marcos, and we had they mixed and matched Unix and Windows. Like we logged into Unix with our Windows account, and that completely blew my mind. Oops, I forgot to show y'all this. So as that's happening, we could like watch it, right? It's all being migrated. I mean, to me, this is just incredibly impressive that you can do all of these things. So if you have any concerns, like, oh, I really want to learn DBA tools, or I really want to learn how to do these queries and drop stuff and learn how truncation works and all of that, it's just a safe place. And this is such a different way of developing than in the old days when we would have to, before virtualization, there was, we would just rebuild the whole server or, write all of those T-SQL scripts. And now this is just so much easier. So you had seen me before. I went through and I clicked. I don't mind clicking. A lot of people do. I mean, I don't want to click through a whole migration, but instead of doing this, what you can just do is copy paste from that web page and just remove it this way. The V is for volume, so it'll remove anonymous volumes. I named mine, which made it not anonymous, so it'll stay there. And then F is to stop and remove. Now, the way that I see this as an efficient way, yes, you can click. Yes, you can. Maybe remember, I guess it's not so bad, Docker, RM, VF, etc. But what I now like to do ever since I made this is that I created a function in PowerShell which will remove both of them. And then I just copied and pasted from the website. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this function and then put that in my profile, right? So I created the function, but restart SQL containers. It's so long. We could be even more efficient by, I'm going to click, let's see, I'm going to close that one. And then there we go. Okay, we're going to set an alias. If you're not familiar with this, aliases are cool. You could just do RS. In my head, restart, and then like it's also restart SQL. So we could just do RS, and now could type RS, and it had already removed it before, but now it just started it back up. So that's super nice. Now I could do whatever I want with it. And something else that I'd wanted to show you is these PS default parameter values are absolutely incredible. What it does is it associates a value by default all the time. Well, in this case, okay, let me go through this step by step. Let's see. Totally, I do the same thing, Jess. So here we're going to do the password. I usually don't like to do this, right? Like anytime that I see this convert to secure string, I'm like, no, why are y'all showing people how to do this? But it's actually okay to do on in CI/CD, like on GitHub Actions. So we'll just do it. We're going to create a credential. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to associate that credential with and you just like look up PS default perimeter values and just copy paste this. So this means any command that calls for SQL credential, just associate it with this credential. So we got it like that, right? And then, I think I might have to close that. Now what we're going to do is whenever we connect to this instance, we'll never have to specify -SQL credential. Very convenient. What up? Look at that. Love it. Okay. Now, you can totally see my workflow is that I always go to Google. Apparently, it's VS Code. It's the VS Code to Google to PowerShell pipeline. All right. So now DBA Tools also supports specifying those ports. And anybody who's familiar with Linux loves using colons for ports. And while like SQL Server actually likes using a comma, right? But the problem with that is that then you have to put it in quotes because that comma means something in PowerShell. So what we did in DBA Tools was we were like, if they put a colon, then we'll just transform it to a comma. All right, boom, check that out. See that right here where it says localhost name? So it just does that for you. We try to be as convenient as possible. Here's something that I love. And the only reason that I am running my SQL Server process in as administrator is because this is running against my local machine. I love aliases. They are incredible. Instead of having to remember that port, you could actually use SQL client aliases. So that's CLI. I think it's this. Yes. All right. This is built in. If you go back as far back as like Windows XP, you'll get this prompt when you type in CLI config. And it creates aliases. It looks like this, right? So you could say, I don't know, shoestring, potato pie. I don't know. I needed something better. I didn't practice this part, potato pie. All right, but then the server name could actually be SQL CS. And then you'd be able to connect to potato pie. Let me try it. This is actually just 64-bit. There's also 32-bit. So then like, what if your application is 32-bit? Is this gonna work? No, kind of like inconvenient. So let's just see if this is, let's see, connect DBA instance, SQL instance, potato pie. Is it, no, maybe it's the wrong one. I don't know. But what we're going to do is I'm going to hit Control C about 500 times and then kind of be bummed that now I have to wait 15 seconds for it to time out. Ooh, yeah, 14. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and paste this. What I like about DBA tools is that you could just use new client alias and then watch what happens. It actually creates it for 32-bit and 64-bit. And now we could do connect DBA instance, SQL instance. And instead of having to remember that second one, we just say mssql2. And then awesome. I love it. I use SQL aliases all the time, especially for my migrations. Makes things way, way easier. God, I know that's driving y'all crazy. I'm so sorry, it drives me crazy too. Now, another thing that you can do, if you aren't familiar with registered servers, first of all, they're incredible. I use them to, I don't even think that my Mac Mini is running, so I might have just like, yeah, I locked up my SSMS. I shouldn't have done that. But I'll tell you what I use registered servers for. When you have a ton of SQL servers, you want some sort of inventory, right? And registered servers are just incredible for that. But now I'm gonna have to like kind of wait and I mean, hopefully this will be done after 15 seconds. And I agree, Brett, whenever we had this guy, he was like 26 and we worked together and I was sitting there like hitting Control C 500 times and he's like, Grandma, you only have to hit it once. And I was like, no. And then hilariously, there was a time whenever like hitting it multiple times actually worked. I loved it. So this was supposed to be deleted because I'm glad that I did this then. So local server groups are awesome because you could do stuff like a new server group and you could say HR. Let's say that you have a bunch of SQL servers for HR, right? And then you could say, you know, you could say SQL 01, no, like SQL cluster, whatever. And then you could say like HR's SQL cluster. And so this is really pretty. Anyway, side story. What do we want to do? Oh, you can also use this. Check it out. If you connect DBA instance into mssql1, right? Because we've created that alias and we have confirmed that it works, you can just pipe that right into add DBA reg server, and then it adds it to the local server groups with the authentication that you need. So it did that, and then it did that, right? And then now what you can do is you can get DBA reg server, and then what we'll do is get DBA database. It'll go to mssql 1 and 2 with the SQL admin login. And then we'll put that in out grid view. And here are all of the things. Why is, oh yeah, I just added SQL cluster. Thank goodness. All right, whew. Now you could see how that works, that you could store it there if you want. I think that Jess's favorite way, Jess likes to do this. So she'll do server 1 equals connect DBA instance to SQL instance mssql1. So she likes to do this and then reuse server 1 over and over again. So she does this and then server 1 and then, oh no, query, select 1. Sweet. So you can also do it that way. And just real quick, I'm so glad Kate gave me like 5 extra minutes. I wanted to show you this. When I told you earlier that we use containers with DBA tools, we actually execute our commands with every single commit to the repository. We execute our commands against a SQL Server instance. And guess how I built this action? I went to the web page, dbatools.io/docker, and then I copy pasted this and I made a couple changes. This little like colon Z, I don't know, there's something different about it, but it looks familiar, right? Now that you know how to use containers for your own development, you can actually use containers for greater projects on like CI/CD or use it locally. And I do want to show y'all one thing before we go. because I've been really excited and he did give me a couple extra minutes. So let's see where we are with this. I'll refresh here. Cool. So it's totally clean. I don't even need the second one, but start DBA, DB encryption. This is the suite. This is a combo kill command, right, where it does like it encrypts your entire instance. And for me, I was really put off by TDE because it's such a super long process. And there's so many steps to it. It's really tedious. And I was like, oh, we were writing the security and encryption chapter for the book, and I hated that we had any T-SQL in there. So I was like, okay, we're just going to like write the entire suite of commands. So here is how, if you ever want to use TDE, here is how you can just encrypt your entire instance. So let's see, mssql1. And then we'll go through. We don't need to specify that. We don't need to specify that. We don't need to specify that either. Oh, backup path. So let's put it in shared. So when you use start DBA DB encryption, it actually will create all of your keys, all of like your service master keys, all of your everything, and it will back them up. And so you do need a backup path. I didn't even make it non-optional. You have to back it up because it is so important. So let's see. We don't need to care about that. Oh, yeah, we do need to care about that. So it's going to prompt us. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to press enter from here. And I'm going to say dbatools.io. This has to be a strong password or it'll reject it. And then, so here's for the backup. So whenever you back up your keys. And then, oh no, I have to do this all again. Okay, I didn't want to just allow somebody to go through and accidentally encrypt their entire instance. And so I did require this extra step, right? So let's just do this again, dbatools.io, dbatools.io, and then it'll go through. It's checking a whole bunch of stuff. It's like enabling everything. And look at that. Imagine if you had like 500 databases. This is so easy to encrypt your entire machine. And I used containers over and over and over again because I wasn't familiar with the process. And I kept doing it wrong. And I kept saving things to like the wrong name. And as I wrap up, and I will take questions, I'm going to go right here to this Docker extension. Maybe make this a bit bigger. And then we will expand here, files, and then shared. And in shared, look, check it out. You'll see, you know, you were required to make those backups. It saves everything for you. Ooh, even like the Northwind. Oh, these are the backups. So those are the backups from a migration. But there we have your cert, your private key, your service master key, and that is in the little shared thing. And I did have to like delete this volume over and over because I had named it. But ultimately, this is how I use containers in my own development. You just like do everything, dirty it up, like start it over, clean and fresh, over and over. Containers makes that incredibly easy. Thank you so much for joining. Appreciate it, Jonathan. So now, does anybody have any questions? And also, did you find this informative? I thought about it. I was like, I probably shouldn't have used the word effective because people are probably expecting dev containers. And I did not cover dev containers, but I will say this, that the next step after you have seen this is if you want to do T-SQL dev, we actually have a Stack Overflow instance with the 10 gig Stack Overflow database that you can practice a whole bunch of queries against. With dev containers, that's something that I don't mess with because PowerShell generally doesn't clutter up your machine, but things like NPM do. And so, yes, ultimately, this hopefully gives you a platform to start. And then once you want to get into dev containers, once you want to see actually how to build your Docker containers, you can. If you go to dbatools.io/Docker repo, it should redirect you to our repo. You could go in here, look at how I did it. So I put everything here out in the open. I have my compose files. I show you essentially how I did it. And then I also have a wiki that shows my journey of like whenever I first published to Docker GitHub, to Docker Hub, and how I bloated it, and then how I ended up bringing it back. So this will help you build your own images if you are interested in it. Sweet. So does anybody have any questions? And did that answer, like, is this what you were looking for? Because this is a brand new session. I really do love containers. And it was 30 minutes or like 37 now. But I hope that that was what some of you were looking for, just to see how it is that I use it and how I just start over and over and over again, and how I could start over right now. So restart, clean that up, set it back up again. And then I could go ahead and I don't know, do something else, whatever I want to do. I'll just do this again while I wait for questions. Excellent. Awesome. Sweet. Awesome. Thank you, Gary. June 7th. We cannot wait. Ooh, what is going on? Oh, you know what? What did I do? Let me try this again. I like how I failed the last thing. I probably didn't make my password hard enough as I was talking. Excellent. Oh, cool, Shane. Yeah, it was really, really fun learning how to do this like efficiently and perfectly. I think, you could just copy and paste a Docker file, even the one that I used, and go from there. But I liked to get it perfect. It was really, it was relaxing, I find, and exciting to go in here. And, if you look, it's all the stuff, the way that I create it, look at what I do. I just have SQL files and I execute it against this, and this like builds that instance with all of the stuff. And so it should be like both familiar and unfamiliar. Excellent. It's true, Mike. Oh, here's that mssql.conf that I like. Like, I want to set my own stuff. Check it out. Oh, I even set up my default backup directory. I do all of this. And in addition, I also if you go to samples, yeah, you could see the way that I do a couple of these, including the Stack Overflow. Here's the third instance where we attach the database, etc. Oh, and look, Claudio contributed. Thank you. That's a good question, Mammoth. I don't remember. Yeah, yes, we do. It's not like a whole chapter, but it is maybe a significant part of a chapter. Jess, and in the lab. Okay, yes. And it actually even talks about these exact containers that I used during this presentation. That's chapter 3. But if you're looking for details, this Docker repo has like all of everything that I have ever learned about containers and how to build them. It's all here. You'll recognize a bit of this. But this does do the building instead of just grabbing the whole thing that's completely made and done for you from Docker Hub. This shows you how to actually build it so that you can customize it. And if anybody wants to, I don't know, well, is it okay, Kay? Can people come off of that and talk if they're interested?
Yes, I would like to stop the recording here and move on to the networking part, so we can actually also talk to each other also, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
If I have an objection, you're free to talk.
No, not at all. I was actually just talking until you did this.
All right.
So I was waiting for you.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording at this point.